It's Wednesday, March the 15th, 2017, and this is your Barbados Today evening update. I'm Emmanuel Joseph. Thanks for joining us. Topping the news at this hour, a month after Prime Minister Hyatt Resort announced that he had granted permission for construction to start on the controversial Hyatt-centric resort hotel on Lower Bay Street in the city, clearing of the site has started. Workmen were seen this morning clearing the plot of land with hand tools and a bobcat machine. Last February 12, Stewart, who is also minister responsible for town planning, told his St. Michael's South Branch meeting that he had granted permission after all of the conditions he thought had to be met were met for construction to commence. The developers of the 15-story project have come under fire for their decision to erect the resort in a UNESCO heritage site, and government has had to take much of that condemnation, especially for not insisting on an environmental impact assessment as well as town hall meetings. A member of the Hyatt Resort cabinet this morning told Barbadians they had a right to be worried about the state of affairs in the country under his government. Contributing to the estimates debate in Parliament, Minister of Industry, Commerce and Small Business Development Donville Innes also urged his ministerial colleagues not to make promises to the people they can't deliver on. The outspoken Innes told his government that it needed to be more realistic about the state of the economy and level with the country. Noting that the current national debt was uncomfortably high and was like an albatross around the people's necks, the minister recommended a cut in the size of the public service and an expansion of the private sector, the closure or sale of some state enterprises, greater efficiency and productivity in the government service, and more ease of doing business. Now, during the same debate, Minister of Transport and Works Michael Lashley announced that new changes to the Road Traffic Act should be ready by June, admitting that government had a problem with the collection of road taxes and a need for greater efficiencies at the cash-strapped state-run transport board. Lashley reiterated that the act was being overhauled. Among other things, the proposed changes would include provision for the electronic vehicle registration to improve the collection of taxes, as well as higher standards and greater use of technology, better monitoring, inspection, and safety in relation to the transport board operations. It would also become an offense for unauthorized persons to park in spots designated for the disabled. 2 people were injured this morning in a 3-vehicle smash-up at the Everton Weeks roundabout section of the ABC Highway this morning. However, Police Public Relations Officer Acting Inspector Roland Cobbler, who was at the scene, reported that the injuries to all 3 drivers were minor. 2 of them were treated on the spot by medical personnel, while the other opted for private medical attention. The accident involved a car, an SUV vehicle, and a maxi-taxi with 5 visitors on board. Firefighters were called to the scene and were able to prevent a possible explosion of the SUV from which sparks were coming after it crashed into the guard rails of the roundabout and ended up in a trench. The car overturned at the roundabout. A former deputy principal of the University of the West Indies at Cayfield says the ugly issue of separation by race and class exists in Barbadian private schools. Professor Pedro Welch, who was also a dean in the Faculty of Humanities and Education, told a lecture on the history of private schools at the Steel Shed last night that racism and class separation have re-emerged in recent years.
Increasingly in recent times in Barbados, race and class is again becoming an issue which underlies the formation of some schools. There are a couple of schools which formed within recent times in Barbados, and when you examine the curriculum of the school and look at their staffing requirements, when they are advertising for staff, in many cases they're not taking staff members directly from us. The people who have done who they want people to teach the International Baccalaureate and other things that we don't generally teach in our schools. And if you look at those schools, there is what I call an imbalance in what I call the racial profile of the school. It's unfortunate that it's happening, but it's happening. There are also a couple other schools in Barbados. If you look at the school population, you only have to pass a part by any of those schools, a couple of schools in Barbados, and you look at the population of Barbados and its racial proportions. And you look at the number of persons going to those schools, it becomes apparent.
In sport, a possible disruption of the 2017 Pine Hill National Primary Schools Athletics Championship semi-final was averted this morning following the speedy intervention of Director of NAPSAC Rich Mark Cave. Coaches employed by the state-owned National Sports Council gathered on the football field of the Usain Bolt Sports Complex for a meeting, which Barbados today understands related to the Council's failure to hold talks with their bargaining agents, the National Union of Public Workers, on appointment grievances. Cave said, having been forewarned to expect protest action this morning, he quickly went to the coach's steward, Ralph Watson, during the meeting and spoke with him. He said that immediately afterwards, the coaches returned to their stations. Cave assured that the games were not affected by the action of the Sports Council staff.
As a trade unionist, and they have a right to meet, and I want not to deny them the right to meet as trade unions, whatever they're meeting. But you know, with every right comes responsibility, and I am not going to allow any trade union meeting to go on here to disrupt NAPSA. If you want to have it out there you can very well do it. You are right to associate, but not in a competition arena, in a national competition. But like I said, they did not interrupt the flow this morning because they've gone to their stations and events are flowing as planned.
Chief Executive Officer of the Council, Jerry Blenman, could not be reached for comment.
There's regional and international news after this short break.
Get your paper, get your paper. Only $2.25, $2.20. Who? For what? That's the bear stale news. I don't read about that on Barbados today since last night. That can't only can't do. $2.20. Who?
The Barbados Today, news you can trust.
We are back with news from the region now. Too many private schools in Guyana are not up to standards and should be closed down. That's the word from General Secretary of the Guyana Teachers Union, Coretta MacDonald.
General Secretary of Guyana Teachers Union, Coretta MacDonald, raised concern about private schools in Guyana, saying that many should not be operational. She gave reasons for her conclusion.
Every year during nationals, which is during the period September to November, when we have all our athletics sports being run off, we usually have to interface with private schools. And many times we have to disqualify those persons from the private schools who want to participate in the championship. And that's because many times when you check for them, they might give you an address, and when you go there to look for the private school, there's no private school operating there.
She stated that the issue of unregistered private schools had been reported to the Education Ministry, particularly the schools that failed to meet rudimentary physical conditionalities.
On the international scene, the Netherlands centre-right Prime Minister Mark Rutte roundly saw off a challenge by the anti-Islam, anti-EU Geert Wilders in an election today, according to exit polls. It is a huge relief to other EU governments facing a wave of nationalism. Rutte's VVD party was projected to win 31 of Parliament's 150 seats, down from 41 at the last vote in 2012, but ahead of Wilders, who tied in second place with two other parties at 19 each, according to the polls by national broadcaster NOS based on interviews with voters. At 81%, turnout was the highest in 30 years in an election that was a test of whether the Dutch wanted to end decades of liberalism and choose a nationalist, nativist path by voting for Wilders and his promise to de-Islamize the Netherlands. And that's news and the sports, but for the very latest, visit our website at www.barbadostoday.bb. Also subscribe to our e-paper, email updates, and like us on Facebook. We are also on Izumi Media in bus terminals or screenplay at supermarkets and gas stations near you, as well as Channel 99 on Flow TV and Mix 96.9 FM. I'm Emmanuel Joseph. Have a fantastic evening.